Well, I hope everyone had a great break. And now we are joined by two wonderful event startup CEO entrepreneurs. And this is going to be a great conversation. So just as a little background, Robyn started RacquetX 2 years ago. It was in Miami. She gathered 2,000 people. Back to Miami this year, gathered 4,000.
Yeah, a little over.
A little over 4,000. And next year we'll be in Fort Lauderdale. Cassandra Farrington is the founder of MJBiz. It started in 2011 as a newsletter. The following year, she created an event that went on to sell out the Las Vegas Convention Center and sold it in 2021 for $150 million to Emerald.
Yes, 120.
And here we have our two CEO entrepreneurs, and it's going to be a great conversation. So I wanted to start by talking about the fact you both created communities for your industries that you were involved with. So how important is building community?
At least as far as MJBiz went, but just philosophically, I think community is really at the heart of anything that we do as event or content in whatever format that content takes. Without that community coming together, without having that glue, that finding that common thread for all of the people involved, then I think you're kind of at ground. You haven't even gotten out of the starting gate.
Okay.
Yeah, I think honoring what that community is about is really important. So I think sometimes people come in and think, well, I know better than the industry at hand. If I build it, they will come. And I just don't believe that to be the case. I think that you have to really integrate yourself into who they are, what they're about, their persona, their behaviors, and then build to help create and continue fostering that community. What do they need, and what are they telling you they need, and what don't they know they need yet?
And what I found interesting is, Robyn, you were a basketball player, not a racket
Correct.
player. And Cassandra, you weren't vested in the cannabis industry until you started MJBiz. So do you feel as outsiders looking in, it gave you an advantage versus being someone vested in the industry from day one?
100%, although I feel as though I'm a liability sometimes, the fact that I'm not some phenom in racket sports. What I think was valuable and that the industry embraced was that I was an outsider. A lot of the folks kind of grew up playing, they went to college, they continued their careers afterward, they moved throughout the industry, so there's very few new people coming into it. And I think that they appreciated someone who has been in an event, in a different industry from them, but in one that could help them grow, was embraced. So I feel very lucky that I didn't throw me out.
Okay.
Yeah, and this ties directly back to conversation we were having a moment ago about community. And Robyn, what you were saying about giving people what they don't even know that they need yet. For us with MJBiz, we didn't know anything about the cannabis industry when we started, but we knew how to teach people about business. And at that point, back in 2011, when we started the newsletter, the cannabis industry was either black market dealers, honestly, who were, now were able to open up a dispensary, a storefront somewhere, or they were coming from the caregiver and the, altruistic side of the industry, neither of which is a traditional business background. So we came at it from the standpoint of, we can help you understand how to keep your inventory straight, how to run your accounting books, how to keep up to date with the regulations that the state keeps changing on you, and gave them that thread of what they didn't know they needed until suddenly they did.
Okay. So you have said, Cassandra, that one of the keys to your success was that scrappy startup mentality. So then you're sold to a company like Emerald that owns 100 trade shows. What happens to that mentality?
Well, so to any entrepreneurs in here, I think many of us understand that when you sell your business, you're selling your business. And so what happens to it after that is completely out of your control, and you have to be at peace with that when you sign on the dotted line. So, which I am, all good. By the time we sold it, the cannabis industry had become much more professional, much more sophisticated, in large part because of the influence that we provided. We helped bring it along to that point. So it was already at a point of needing to change that personality a bit anyway. and while keeping connected to its roots, which are our entire staff, except for myself, my husband, who was our IT guy, and my business partner, all the rest of the staff went with the business. Nobody lost their job. They all went over to Emerald. And so we did keep that through line for a number of years with MJBiz. And that said, right, like people who work in a small, scrappy startup environment are not necessarily the right people to work for a big trade show or a big trade show company. That sort of corporate environment does not always fit with it for everybody, which again is fine. Everyone was able to find their own transition into whatever came next for them.
I was the complete opposite side of the coin. I started, always been scrappy, but I started at UBM, so if I'm dating myself, if we remember, the artist formerly known as UBM and its many iterations before that, CMP and all the things. So, I felt like I was always in a very entrepreneurial role, or at least put in a very entrepreneurial role in a large corporation, but I never felt like I fit in. I was always fighting against wanting to do more and have budget to improve experience and do different things, and I felt in my soul that I was not able to build what I wanted to truly build. So I mic dropped years ago, and then kind of found myself in this situation now. So, but the scrappiness never really left. But it is night and day in terms of of what that role really looks like.
So that brings up the question, private equity is investing in shows more and more, and there is the risk that shows will become homogenized. Do you feel that can be the case?
Yeah, 100%. I think it goes back to part of that community and serving that community piece of it. If you just, templatize, launching, especially in a new area, I think you lose the essence and the magic of what you're truly trying to put to life. Like, we all build moments. No matter where you break it down into P&L and you splice and dice things, we're still serving industries and people and creating moments for them. And if that goes away, anybody can do what we do. But I think we're creating human to human experiences. It's not B2B, it's not B2C, it's businesses and human to human. And I think without that piece of it, I think private equity and investment firms can really kind of suck the life out of it.
And I'd like to remind you in the audience, we have two amazing entrepreneurs here. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the app and I'll try to get to them at the end. So another question I had has to do with creating a must-attend event in a really crowded calendar. Obviously, you did that with MJBiz. It eventually sold out the Las Vegas Convention Center. How did you do that?
It was because from the get-go, what we did was create a place for all of these people who were working in these silos all around the country, whether it was a silo of their state, because each of these cannabis markets are state regulated. So if you're doing business in California, you pretty much cannot do business with somebody in Massachusetts, like by regulation and by law. But there's a lot you can learn from each other. So there's those sorts of silos, but then there's also, the cultivators, and then the HVAC manufacturers, and the, dispensaries, and the retail specialists, all of these different segments of the marketplace. And so we created an environment where all of those professionals, all the people in the executive levels of those companies could come together in a place that was very conducive for doing business. There were other cannabis festivals, there were other, places where, they were doing cannabis competitions and things like that, none of which is a conducive business deal-making environment. And so we created this platform that was very professional, it looks just like every other trade show, genuinely. People think like, ooh, I'm gonna go, pick up some samples. No, you're not. You're kind of like, I'm not gonna say there aren't samples there, but there are not supposed to be samples there. And so, we've worked very hard for that slice of the market.
Yeah. For us, when we first started diving into a business plan, it was this is going to be a B2B show. This is a B2B show. And then when we started to talk to the industry, you know, there was this magic of play and creating an environment where the folks who were in the businesses also played all of these sports for you know, most of their career, if not one, if not many of them. And it became, you know, as we spoke to many of the brands, it was, you know, we wanted to be able to demo things and actually try stuff out. So, you know, if we were going to be building courts and like putting all this effort into building stuff, we might as well make it consumer friendly as well and see what happens. So we were able to join this in this festival-like environment, B2B2C, which then, you know, it brought that spark that people, tried to bring out what people love about what they do. So it's not about what we do, but, you know, they love being in the racket sport industry, whether they're in nuts and bolts and lighting, court building. There's some really unsexy parts of this business, but they all came together because they played. And that was their common denominator across all of it. So like, you know, I always try and look at like, what's the common thread that brings them all together? And then how do you maximize that? So in turn, that turned into a nightmare for me. But it was, you know, last year in year 2, we built 12 courts by 12 different court manufacturers. And if you look up PADEL, paddle, like it's not an easy build in 3 days. And we built 5 of those courts. So, but the point was that everybody, whether you were complaining about pickleball, taking over tennis courts, or whatever that was, everybody came together to play. So that was like the magic of the community that we were able to pick.
So we have a room full of event leaders here, and I'm sure you all have ideas of your own or events that maybe one day you would like to start. What would be a piece of advice you can offer everyone?
Don't do it. No, just kidding. Just kidding.
Yeah, Robyn and I actually spent a good bit of time just out in the
I cried. No, just
no, it's hard. Yeah, not gonna lie. It's a road that is tough, and it helps to have friends and people who understand, support wherever you can find it. But yeah, I mean, it's 100% worth it. You know, whether or not your event ends up, you know, exiting for $120 million or not. But like we were even just talking about, like, it's just, we've all had that high of a successful event, and seeing those serendipitous meetings happen on our show floors and understanding at a very visceral level what we are creating within our own companies and within the communities that we're serving. And there's nothing like it.
The highs are so high and the lows are so low. And I knew that, like, oh yeah, I know, I'm built for this. Like, you know, like I could do this. Like I ran, blah, 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 blah. Like that's not gonna get me. Well, let me tell you, I was humbled. It's just extreme. I remember opening the first day of the first event. We had, not many people know this, we had, like, we were hoping for 2,000 people, right? Just to like with a pulse to like walk through that door, right? And we had like 900 people registered the night before we opened the show. And like we had, oh gosh, Vinny, you were there. We had what, like 120,000 square feet, if you can imagine. Like I was medicated, like it was a long road.
Were you medicated by Cassandra's products?
Hard prescription drug. But I don't know what happened, but something happened and we ended up with 2,000 people, and I don't know exactly, but like the dread that I felt that night before to when the doors opened and I was like, oh, there's people, is amazing. And then all of the bumps along the way. I mean, it is worth it, because you know that you've created something that even like one little email of someone who's like, we connected and I started doing work for them and we ended up building this great thing. Like, I think that's in the end why we do what we do, is to create a handshake, a hug, a moment, whatever that is. And like, that makes it worth it, I think. It does. It makes it 100% worth it.
At MJBiz, you could very clearly see a progression of somebody who came to the show the first year, possibly registering under an assumed name because they didn't want to, you know, really be out there, but coming and being like, oh wait, no, this is not like a smoke fest. This is a real thing. That person would be back the next year, attending every single education session, looking for a business partner. They'd be back the next year with a business partner and a plan, looking for an investor. They'd be back the next year as a 10 by 10, right? And you could see this progression of this entire industry through the show. And I was talking to Walter actually earlier today about how what we do in the event space, it is a bellwether of how an industry is doing. And I know we all realize that, but it's important every now and then to keep our heads up and remember that, when our show is doing well, when racket sports is growing, it is an indication that racket sports in the country, in the world, is a growing and active and vibrant and healthy industry, right?
Yeah.
And and when our shows are hitting rough times, that's probably a pretty good indication that there's other macroeconomic forces in play.
And I think it's important to note, no matter what you own the event, you work on it, whatever it is, like, I just iterate. Like, don't just be so bullheaded that, like, this is the plan. Like, I put this business plan together and this is the path forward. I think that's, like, it's a bit foolish. Like, listen as much as you possibly can. And I mean, I'm in this mode right now. We're going into year 3 and we need to be profitable this year. It is, okay, let me really listen. And maybe we need to make some major adjustments and we need to make some tweaks and we need to iterate. And I think that's okay. It doesn't mean anyone was wrong or they made a mistake. I think that's being very smart at what we do.
Why the switch to Fort Lauderdale?
You baited me on that one. Well, several reasons. My politically correct answer is that it's easier for our attendees to get in and out of the convention center. There's a hotel attached to it currently, and that it is a bit closer to the Miami Open. The real answer?
This stays between us.
Yeah. Vegas rules. I don't believe, and this is a whole soapbox that I could take a lot of time on, but I won't. I think that in the trade show convention space, that I don't think it's very conducive to startups, personally, or to smaller events and startups. I think that the big guys have preference because they sell lots of room nights for the city, and I get that that's how it works. Like, it's pretty black and white. And the amount of room nights in Miami that you can attribute to your event, you are rated. And you were either the top tier, you're 2 or 3. We're the bottom of the barrel. We have a lot of Florida people who come. They stay with friends. They stay in Airbnbs. There was no way to really attribute a lot of our economic impact. And we didn't get dates. So we lost our dates before the show because another large show wanted to come in. So that's the soapbox. But we're very happy, and I think it was a blessing in disguise that we're in Fort Lauderdale. And we're very happy to be there. And we love Miami, except for that.
And Cassandra, you always were in Vegas.
Well, we weren't, actually. We started in Denver. We started in a Masonic lodge in Denver because that was the first place when we went knocking on doors and like, hey, we want to have a cannabis show. And I'm so sorry, no room at the end for you. So that we started at a Masonic lodge in Denver, and then we went to a racetrack outside Seattle, and then we went to the Rio. The Rio gave us a 3-year contract in Vegas. And at the end of those 3 years, we were big enough that we went into the convention center at that point.
Wow. Robyn, you have said that year 1 taught you that you probably should have hired slower and fired faster.
Oh, yeah.
I was curious to hear more about
biggest takeaway of my life was I should have hired slower and fired faster. I think I turned over the entire team. There's some OGs that have stood the test of time, but everybody else was turned over like twice. Mm-hmm. For me, it's like, we're gonna run at this certain speed. You're either on board or you're not. And I could tell if you're on board pretty quickly, but I just was like hoping that maybe they'd get it, or I was just like, maybe it's me, maybe it's not you, it's me. And I held on hoping for people. And in a startup, when time is like all our product exists 3 days out of the year, leading up to it is critical. I wasted a lot of time with not the right people.
We went through that too.
Yeah.
Actually, ours was more like right pre-pandemic. I was trying to transition out, and we staffed up to support the person who was going to be succeeding me as CEO, and we overstaffed, and then we went into the pandemic overstaffed, and that had predictable results.
We were like, we're to start this, and it's April, almost May, and the event's gonna be in March of next year. Like, we had less than a year. Like, I was like, okay, you want to do marketing? Cool. You want to do this? And I just was like, whoever was like in front of me, and that was don't do that.
So If there are people in the audience who do want to start an event, are there any resources you could recommend that they reach out to?
Oh no, they're laughing because of that.
Specific resources. No, I'm not gonna. I can't. Name. I think the community, right? Like the events community, is huge. Okay. Right. Just lean on the people around you. Find friends. Find a couple of trusted people to just, workshop it with. It doesn't have to be a big time commitment on the part of those people. Just somebody to kick tires and tell you what you're missing. And yeah, just lean on the people around you. There are amazing resources, and I do think that the events industry 100% wants to see other event people succeed.
Right. And Robyn, you had mentioned that there's certain misfits that could actually be missed opportunities.
Well, yeah. So I mean, when I was at UBM, and it's a semi-good example, but I kind of ran the Land of Misfit Toys. It was all the acquisitions that didn't fit into something else, or it was losing money and we don't know what to do, or we're moving to a new city and it's 100,000 square feet smaller. How do we maintain growth? And so it was all these things that they did we're going to put out to pasture. And so I think what I learned was that there's beauty in the mess, no matter what. And I think any event, I think, has the potential to be great. It's what your expectations that you're placing on it are. We put a lot of square pegs in round holes that shouldn't be what they are, and they need to be something else. And I think it's really designing from a space of not what we want this event to be and what I want this thing to be, but it's what does the industry we serve need, and how does that come to life for them? That was always my biggest takeaway, was if we just did this one thing differently, it might not make sense here, but in the end, this could be a really amazing show.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've heard it discussed among the big event organizers from time to time, maybe we should do some swaps, right? I've got an orphan over here and you've got a redheaded stepchild over here, but your guy would fit really well with this portfolio, but they don't ever seem to do it. But I still to this day think it's a brilliant idea.
So I was curious, when you were building MJBiz, did you have the idea in mind that you eventually were going to sell it?
Anybody who starts a business, sure, has in the back of their head, sure, and then one day maybe I'll sell this thing, if my kid doesn't want to take it over or whatever. Mm-hmm. But I really firmly believe that the best way to maximize the value of a business is to run it as if you're going to own it and run it and love it forever. And if you do that, you are going to maximize the value of whatever exit comes about. And back to your question about PE money and venture capital money in this industry, I think one of the challenges with it is that by definition, that PE and venture money is not in it for the long term. They are in it for a 3 to 5 to 7 year turn, and if by year 5 at least, they're going to be knocking on your door saying, hey, where's my exit? Because I got to put this money into the next thing. Mm-hmm. And so you're constantly being forced to not necessarily run the business as if you're going to run it and own it and love it for all time.
And then you lose, like you said, that scrappy startup mentality.
You lose that scrappy startup mentality.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you have a vision of one day selling RacquetX?
Yeah. So that was so I was in this place in my career. I was consulting, and I was just I just want someone with a pile of cash to
Don't we all?
come with me with an idea, or half an idea, and just drop it on my lap, and then it happened. So I'm not kidding, it did, and but part of that was that it was outside money to run this. So yeah, so the business plan from the start is a 5-year run to exit, or however long that needs to be. But it's very clear. Well, it wasn't PE money, but it's very clear that we want an exit at some point.
So then going into year 3 is really crucial.
It is. I think we have to. Launching an event in this business can go on forever. Cash flow is tough when there's just one single show. It is a tough, especially when you're getting paid 50% deposit and then 50%. You get paid twice a year, basically. it just makes it a little bit harder. That's all. But yeah, we're looking for, I'm interested. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, unfortunately, that's all the time we had, but this has been such a great conversation, and I thank you both so much. Thank you.